The aid that was the U.S. aid that was cut off should have been cut off. I mean, $15 million for condoms for the Taliban, and
Sir,
you know,
$47,000
to a transgender opera in Colombia.
$15 million for condoms for the Taliban?
That's what we hear. That's what they discovered.
Is it though? See, that's GOP Representative Buddy Carter, and he's spreading what you'll be shocked to find out is misinformation about USAID funding to justify Donald Trump and Elon Musk killing that organization, and in so doing, killing a lot of people around the globe while also killing a significant chunk of American soft power. There's just a lot of killing going on. And he's so bad at his job, which was to just go on the news and spread the already debunked conspiracy theory, that he didn't even get the lie right. It's not $15 million for the Taliban, you moron. It's $50 or $100 million, depending on when you ask Donald Trump, in condoms for Hamas. Now, none of those things are true, but you could at least try to get the lie right. And what do you know? The other things that he's cited to justify killing US aid and that Carolyn Leavitt cited also ended up not being true. So the Washington Post did a great breakdown of this. The White House's wildly inaccurate claims about US aid spending. And so Leavitt had basically created like a dossier of 12 things that mean it's unacceptable for the US aid to continue as it is. Now, there's fundamentally an issue with their list where if you add up all of those 12 things, it's pennies. It's nothing compared to the funding that USAID gets or that the US budget is. But I also think that we need to dive into the specifics because they make claims like you heard from Buddy Carter there of a transgender opera. $47,000 for a transgender opera, which kind of sounds like it might be fun. Also not true. It was $25,000, which isn't that big of a mistake. Also, it wasn't the USAID that funded it. It was the State Department. It was a totally separate thing. They also talk about a transgender comic book. Again, it's not a transgender comic book. It's a comic book that has a transgender character in it. And also USAID didn't fund it. Again, it was the State Department. And so of the 12 examples they cite, virtually all of them are wildly inaccurate. Most weren't actually funded by USAID. Most don't actually concern the sort of identity politics, fear-mongering thing they're talking about. They'll just say that like, because a thing has a gay character, that's what it is, or the point of it, which isn't true. One of them actually was from the Trump era. They leave that out. And at the end of the day, we're talking about very small amounts of funding anyway. But you're not supposed to think about that, okay? You're supposed to just be happy that they're killing a thing that might result in trans people in Peru being sad for a while or something. And along the way, you'll then ignore the people who will actually be suffering. It's not operas in Peru that at the end of the day are going to bear the brunt of the death of USAID. You know who's actually going to suffer a lot is US farmers. You see, USAID oversees projects such as food aid, disaster relief, and health programs in over 100 countries with a staff of more than 10,000. We'll return to that number in a second, and a budget of around $40 billion. Billions of those dollars flow back into the US economy, or at least did until the spending was frozen. And a lot of that comes in the form of buying food from US farmers to ship around the world for these projects. And so purchases and shipments of US food aid worth over $340 million, that includes rice, wheat, and soybeans, have been paused just during this freeze. To give you an idea, the massive sums of money that are going around. That has left hundreds of tons of American-grown wheat stranded in Houston alone. And so billions of dollars that would have gone to US farmers now will not. And along the way, a lot of these crops are just gonna rot. It's absolutely wasted. And the thing about it is, like, what does Donald Trump have with US farmers? He's screwing them over to the tune of billions of dollars. He just screwed over California farmers with that little water release stunt that didn't do firefighting any help and might ruin crops next season when the water is actually needed. And I'll also remind you that his trade war with China ended up doing a ton of damage to farmers during his first term, necessitating a multi-billion-dollar payoff just so that they wouldn't go under because the damage the trade war did. And so that's the sort of thing that's intentionally lost when they talk about transgender operas and comic books. That's not what the big money is really about. It's US farmers that are gonna be really hurting in the years to come. But Ben, I want to go to you. You've seen that this has been all over the news of last week. What do you make of this whole thing over USAID?
Okay, well, firstly, I agree with you. What is Trump doing with farmers? Because it's been a very schizophrenic approach, even from term one, when due to his first round of tariffs in his first term, he then had to subsidize American farmers so they wouldn't completely go under. And now, is he gonna subsidize them again because his own plans are again taking money away from the farming community? That's an issue. Now, of course, freezing US aid, which they conveniently also refer to as USAID. So the word aid's not even in it in the way it's presented. So emotionally it doesn't hit as we are helping people, but instead it's just another program. It's insane to be cutting it blanketly, to be freezing it blanketly. And if there truly is some reason to be reducing it or even ending it, which is arguable whether it's in a president's purview or not to do. Some say because it was started under an executive order that it can be stopped by a president. That's to be litigated in the courts. But why do it immediately? It just proves how malintended the people in this administration are. They're not trying to save waste, fraud, and abuse. They are just trying to, with draconian cuts, sow chaos, whatever the damage might be, because they want to, as fast as possible, implement their agenda. That said, also on the flip side, we give them reasons to be able to even allow the altered misinformation to get out there, because what is the State Department doing funding operas and comic books? This is our tax money, and we are strapped for money here in our own country. Our economy's not doing amazingly. People certainly are not doing amazingly in their pocketbooks. They don't have $400 for an emergency. We do need to be cutting waste, fraud, and abuse in our government. We should never be funding operas and comic books in other countries, regardless of what characters they are in it. And so we give cover to this narrative that we're doing it through organizations we may not be doing it through. Whatever the case, we of course should be getting rid, in my opinion, of this waste. And when you allow these narratives to flow, then they can say, oh, it's this org, it's that org, end it all. And we've, again, I think, lost the plot by spending way too much money and having too bloated of a government, so it gives way to way overcorrection.
I mean, it feels like they're waging a PR war, right? And I think it's a mistake to, when people on the left just brand these people as crazy, foaming at the mouth lunatics, when oftentimes they're doing things that have a very clear logic to it. I think Trump and his cronies can intuit that stuff like, say, funding the war in Gaza endlessly, funding Ukraine's war endlessly, billions of dollars leaving our tax coffers to go abroad, when all we hear, when we have a crumbling infrastructure and families are struggling, that we don't have enough. They can intuit that people don't like that. And so going after something called USAID and branding it as, extravagances abroad, they know they're going to win that on a PR basis. Now, again, the proponents of USAID, it's on them to go out and explain why this matters and why everyday people should want this agency to exist. But Trump and them have a clear directive, and they have a sense that they could brand this as more extravagances by our government for purposes abroad that aren't quote unquote America first. And it's a clear vision to sell. You and I may not agree with it or like it, but it's kind of easy to see why somebody might see this, an everyday person might see this and be like, I don't see anything wrong with this.
Yeah, in terms of making the case for it, sometimes it's helpful to have like people who are like culturally relevant and stuff like that. So I have an example of it. In 2019, Melania and Ivanka Trump promoted very successful USAID programs that they were running to fund like entrepreneurship programs in Africa for women, the sort of stuff that I'm assuming would now be banned by the government as DEI, international DEI. But that's what they were doing. Ivanka and Melania were touring the world and buying video equipment and stuff like that to put on presentations. And you know what? That's probably the best use of their time from the first term when he was in office. What I would say, I totally agree with you. The issue is, and maybe it's hard for people to see this because the zone gets flooded with all these cuts and everything. Donald Trump, despite supposedly being a builder, has always been 1,000 times better at destroying than building things. They're gonna do all these cuts. Is he proposing massive infrastructure plans? The border wall, I guess. The concentration camp in Guantanamo, I guess that's infrastructure, I suppose. I don't know, he killed the massive interstate highway EV network that they were gonna build. And so, like a lot of people I think rightly will be like, we are spending too much money, we should spend it here. So let's cut it. But that doesn't mean we're gonna spend it here. Donald Trump is preparing, within a month, they're gonna do their tax cut bill. It was just estimated to cost between $5 to $11 trillion. And I think there's something, I totally understand for a regular person that doesn't pay attention to the news a lot, how like $25,000 for an opera like swells to fill the entire confines of your brain, but $5 to $11 trillion, 95% of which will go to the richest people in our country. I think that's more important. They're not gonna build highways, they're not gonna build bridges. We're not even gonna have air traffic control soon. They're putting Elon Musk's 19-year-olds in charge of it despite having no experience in the field before. And so he's very good at dismantling things, and that's what we've seen over the past couple of weeks. I would love to see some building, and I don't think we're gonna see it out of Donald Trump. So to return to Waz's point from the end of the first block, it would be great to see Democrats running on a platform of rebuilding America after the 4 years of devastation that we're in the opening phases of right now. We do need that massive infrastructure bill, far beyond anything Biden passed in his first term. In any event, to close out this segment, there are some lawsuits that are trying to stop some of the cuts and likely the firings because of the 10,000 employees that USAID had internationally a week ago, it's expected that maybe by the end of today, it'll be down to 600, which I think is a cut of 97%. But they were all bad and they were all just wasting money, I'm sure. Elon Musk looked at it very closely.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.